Limecraft is all around you, on your t-shirt, back there. Tell us all about what is Limecraft.
By now, it's become a fully featured online workspace for video teams, for video professionals.
In terms of product, you say it's very lean, right? So how do you address this kind of features? Do you have like feature flags that get turned on or turned off for bigger companies?
We use that technology to match shots with the screenplay, so to effectively automatically cut shots into scenes.
I think many of the Saas companies that listening right now could take a note of that.
We discovered counterintuitively that our sweet spot were the most complex, most demanding productions. That's where automation makes sense. These guys had an urgent problem.
BotTalk podcast.
So, Maarten, nice to have you here on our podcast. And Limecraft is all around you, on your t-shirt, back there. Tell us all about what is Limecraft.
Thank you, and thanks for giving us the floor, Andrey. Limecraft started as a media asset management solution, but by now it's become a fully featured online workspace for video teams, for video professionals. So not technology for the purpose of automating, but really using smart services to improve the job of video professionals, because as you know good enough, our customers are challenged with ever-increasing volumes of video that they have to ingest and process, and ever more versions they need to output. They used to make one single television program for the local broadcaster. Now, whether you're a podcaster or a blue chip producer, you need to sometimes create thousands of versions. And that commands automation. Again, not for the sake of automation, but helping people managing that vast amount of content. That's what Limecraft is all about.
Wow! And who is your like typical customer? What are they looking for when they come into you?
That's always a tricky question, because if I say we're going for the largest brands like Warner Media and the Associated Press, two of our flagship customers, then as a podcaster you might feel yourself intimidated. But conversely, we happily support one-man bands and starting independent producers as well. Our product is genuinely scalable, and it can scale down, it can scale up, which whether you're large or small, it has the advantage that we follow your production requirements. But I think one of the startup challenges is to find a proper focus, to have a crystal clear marketing, and that has been a challenge for us, because the pitch for a large brand with billions in revenue is completely different than making an offering for a smaller producer. The common denominator, however, is larger volumes, or extremely large volumes of video, and quite often geographically spread, and they have to make sure content is more easily exchanged across the organization. So think the Associated Press. They have main offices in New York, DC, and London, and perhaps thousands of branch offices all over the world. These guys have a very strong incentive to make sure their operations run online in the cloud, and that it's done in such a way that people from wherever they log in can easily access and exchange the content. And that works as well with professional documentary makers. These are often smaller producers, but if you look at a feature-length documentary, they've probably used 500 hours of Russia's raw material for 1 hour of finished product. Now, as an archive producer, you don't want to look at these pictures from the beginning to the end, manually transcribing the audio and describing the images. So we give them tools, automatic speech recognition, computer vision, image recognition, to help them processing the video. And now coming to the very essence, we can play that trick in scripted entertainment, think feature film or a television series, where we use that technology to match shots with the screenplay, so to effectively automatically cut shots into scenes. But it's a great tool for documentary makers and journalists as well to automate the grunt work and give back time for creative storytelling.
Wow, that is very exciting and very, I think, a deep dive to understand what your product is all about. And I can imagine you already mentioned that is challenging to address big companies, but at the same time, smaller companies. In terms of product, you say it's very lean, right? So how do you address this kind of features? Do you have like feature flags that get turned on or turned off for bigger companies? Or how do you manage it in terms of like product?
The key thing for us as a relatively small company is to keep, in technical speak, a single code branch. If we give up a single code branch, that's a shortcut to suicide. By the way, I started by saying our product is an online cloud-based offering, but we have we have 7 customers that run an on-site stack for various reasons. The French government says content produced by French public money should stay on French territory. And another customer is working on very sensitive, privacy-sensitive data. It must stay over there. Others do it for pure performance reasons. They're storing petabytes of content, and it would be completely stupid to put that in the cloud. But again, it's a single code base. So we deploy a new version of our software once or twice per week. It's a fully automated process, and we touch all these local installations as well. And further on, to your point, how we manage the variety of workflows and the aspect of customization, frankly, it's a matter of giving them the illusion of personalization rather than to customize the product, because that's not the avenue you want to go. So it's highly configurable with mechanisms of templates. We can, with a single click of the button, we can change the look and feel completely from a news environment to a feature film environment. It's just cosmetics on the surface.
Wow, that is very insightful, I think, and also like a single code base. I think many of the SaaS companies that listening right now could take a note of that. And I liked your analogy. It's going to be a suicide if you are not doing that. So because focus is so important. Maybe stepping back a bit, I know for a fact you've been around for a couple of years. So maybe tell us about the background of the startup. Why did you start? What is your personal background? And in terms of how did it all started?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. It all started when the entire core team of Limecraft was working for the Belgian state broadcaster, VRT, the Flemish radio and television station. Beautiful company, one of the pioneers in terms of digitization, when digitization was still a thing, early 2000s. And to give you the complete backstory, I learned IT. I don't have an IT background, but I learned it on the job during the job before Verte. And then I realized IT is the way to go. That's really interesting stuff, but I want to do it only in a company where information technology is the blood and vessels. So I don't want to go working for an insurance company or a bank, with all due respect. I knocked on the door of the national broadcaster, and that conversation took no more than 15 minutes. In front of me was a crazy boss. And he kicked in by saying, 1999, Andrey, somewhere in the near future, within 15 years, television will probably become interactive. And our back offices are not ready yet. You know, Maarten, we write screenplays in a Word document, we print it out, we make production notes, pencil and paper on the left-hand side, and that's how we're gonna automate, industrialize the media production process? No way. So he said to me, I'm hiring a team that's gonna do applied research and development on digitizing the back office, and he didn't refer to digitizing the video as such, but it's all about the metadata. Everybody can do the heavy lifting of video and audio, that's the easy part. But understanding the data, understanding the content of the pixels, creating a single set of numbers that can be used for automation purposes, that was a challenge. And so we did public company, we did RFPs, we spent several millions in CapEx budgets. There were 17 different brands of software competing for the data. So in the core, there was a big, huge asset management system from a beautiful Swedish company. Then we had Panasonic cameras, we had Avid and Sony editing software, 17 brands of software fighting, competing for the data. It was a challenge to keep that alive, and that's to say the least. At that very moment, my colleague at that time, co-founder of Limecraft, Nico, we looked at each other and we said, shit, there's a massive opportunity in the market. Rather than to spend more than 20 million euros, if you give us that money, we write a piece of software from scratch and we're going to do a much better job. But the hard truth is that this is not a lean startup. We were not picking one part of the application landscape. Our challenge was to come with an end-to-end integrated approach. And the second challenge was that when we started Limecraft in 2010, we had been working for Pioneer for several years. We were 5 or 6 years too early on the market with a cloud-native approach. Our potential customers were on conferences and cocktails, they were talking about the cloud, but it was completely unaccepted at that point in time. And it was a long and bumpy road, just in 2015, where we had to take the decision to either pull the plug or to pivot the company back to normal software, you know, on a DVD. Just when we took the decision, we were approached by France Television and BBC saying, Maarten, we've got a very complicated project here. It's a monster project. It's shot in the south of France in Montpellier, roughly 1,000 files per day, and it has to be cut the next business day in Paris. And we just don't have the time to do the logistics manually like we would otherwise do. And we discovered that our sweet spot, our Geoffrey Moore in Crossing the Chasms says as a startup company, you need to find a fishing pond small enough where you can become the market leader in 12 months' time. Anyway, we discovered counterintuitively that our sweet spot were the most complex, most demanding productions. That's where automation makes sense. These guys had an urgent problem of volume, etc. And we had the solution. And then we started. We became break-even 3 years later. We're now the third year in a row break-even. And if I should give one piece of advice for fellow startup owners, make sure as a manicas that you get break-even as soon as possible, or that you can at least be break-even overnight if you have to. Taking external capital.
Why is that? Why is that? Let us dig, because that is such an important, for me personally, such an important question, and for various reasons. So let us dig into that. Why is that?
Admitted, when we started the company, we were on a American style trajectory. We make a pitch deck. There is no product yet, but we value it arbitrarily at 2 million. We sell 10% of the shares for 200,000, and we do the development. Well, that's not how it works in continental Europe. It might be in more Anglo-Saxon countries, but that's not how it works in Europe. Secondly, the media sector is a beautiful place. It's amazing technology. It's great people. It's a wonderful place to be, but it's hard to find financing because it's very niche, because we're sometimes dealing with customers that tend to demonstrate very long sales cycles. We had difficulties in getting access to finance. In the end, you can't keep on spinning the wheels. In the end, we decided, let's cut through the chase. We're gonna make this thing break even, and this is gonna be another story. It required us, however, to close a couple of landmark deals, because financing is one thing. Discovering what's your best sales channel is another challenge. So, you know, we've played around with partnerships, etc., etc. If you don't have a massive brand, all these partnerships and indirect channels don't work. You have to do it yourself. Every region where we're successfully deployed, there is a pattern whereby we close the first 3 or 4 deals ourselves. And when you see that momentum starting, you see that service providers and distribution channels are come knocking on your door rather than you on their door. You see that you start having different conversations with investors, banks, equity investors, whatever. If you can be break even in principle, it's a completely different type of conversation with whomever you need to talk to.
Great. I think that's a great advice, and I think the point that you made in the beginning about differences between American style startup and continental startup is all there. We at BotTalk really lived it, and the problem is that you read all these books that were written for the Valley startups. So, and you try to follow that advice, but you know, in reality, in Europe, as you said, you need to really land a couple of these landmark deals in order to also to establish. And I also maybe step back about your market entry strategy. You mentioned that you first, when you go to a new market, to a new whatever country, as I suppose, right? You first go and do sales yourself. So a couple of sales you do yourselves, and then you can scale this kind of process. Can you elaborate on that one?
Yeah, sure. So whether you're flying in or staying abroad, The first deals, you have to do them yourself. I think it's founder-led sales in the very beginning, because for many of our colleagues, you will enter that particular market with a product which is 80% finished, with 60% documentation. So you're specifically looking for those early adopters for whom their leap of functionality and the value added is more important than perfect documentation. Secondly, more subtly, those types of customers will almost, if not always, have some specific requirements. And that requires someone in the conversation that has a very detailed view on the roadmap, that can judge. If you as a customer ask me that question, okay, that's a minor issue, that will cost us 5 days of customization, of this is 100 days and probably not feasible in the time we have in mind. But if you're early enough managing such a process, chances are very likely you can come to a respectable agreement on what will be an MVP within the next 6 weeks. But you almost need a founder of the company to make that judgment. Teaching in such a level of detail to a sales representative, or worse, a sales channel, what is in, what is not in, or what can be in, is going to be a challenge. And even if it works, I'm afraid your roadmap will go all the place. And that's a challenge for a technology company. Make sure all those requests are filtered, categorized, converged to a single code branch that we talked about a couple of minutes ago. If you can keep that consistently managed, I think that's the ultimate proof of scalability.
Yeah, definitely. Great insights. What about when you talk about this kind of sales process and your first customers? What about now and maybe the ratio of inbound and outbound leads? Is it more people coming because they know what you're doing? They did some kind of research and they found out, okay, here's a great company, Limecraft. They seem to check all the check boxes that we require. Or do you still do some kind of outbound leads as well?
Yes, both. And here's something I have to admit. Coming from the broadcast and professional environment, until I would say 3 years ago, the majority of our efforts was outbound. Think trade shows, specialized conferences like Languages and the Media in Berlin, and obviously IBC, Saas in France, BV in London. And we almost neglected our channels that would lead to inbound approach. Our website was quite static. Now, we were running on a shoestring budget when it comes to marketing. Only recently, for obvious reasons, we had to change that strategy 3 years ago. And we've done experiments with PR agencies and other instruments, but only recently we discovered the massive power and potential of a website which is optimized to catch exactly the prospects you want to talk to. And it's really not that hard. You need to understand the mechanics. You need to reverse engineer how Google thinks, but with a couple of good blog posts and valuable content, the right wording, you're immediately in the top 5 of Google results on whatever words you would like to be triggered. And if that's not the case, if we would be only in speech to text, for example, where you've got 20, 30, 40 competitors, Otter, Sonix, Happy Scribe, Trint, you name them. There it would be very hard to stay on top, and if you want to be on top, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Now, I'm not sure if you've read another great book, even smaller than Crossing the Chasm, From Zero to One, written by Peter Thiel. Amazing story, where it says, certainly for a developing company, competition screws your market. You have to step up, you have to level the playing field, you have to find an area where there's not too much competition, preferably none. That's where you have to be. And so we've luckily with our financing model was co-creation. 50% of our development over the years, 14 million in total, has been funded by lead customers. So obviously, sizable customers that have a budget for procuring bespoke development. We manage the intellectual property that it would be vested in our company. And then here comes the trick. We're in Europe, Andrey. We can match that with funds coming from Stadium, Horizon 2020, Creative Europe, all these beautiful instruments which United States companies, they just have to do it with equity. Our largest competitor was $250 million funded. Imagine.
Wow, crazy.
They were sold last year to Adobe. So I think they did a great job. Now, in Europe, I think we don't need to pursue the same strategy. That would be stupid because we don't have access to those volumes of capital. So we have to be smarter and behave differently. And I think the key is go to your customer, be transparent. Early adopters will like it if they can enter in conversation with what will be in the roadmap. So there's our approach. That's our secret weapon. I would say 12 months of the roadmap, the release plan is absolutely fixed, and that's something we can't change. But looking ahead, we are open with a number of handpicked number of key customers that appreciate it a lot, that they can have a first hand in the roadmap.
That's a great, actually, sorry to interrupt, but that's a great also sales kind of pitch for long-term relationship with a customer, because you say, okay, 12 months of a roadmap are blocked, so you have to stay with us at least 12 months, and then afterward, that's a great. And I think our experience also tells that if the most serious customers will accept that you are blocked for some times, and then they will enter the conversation. Interesting, yeah.
Andrey? Yeah. We lost a couple of seconds, Andrey, so Alexander will have to cut this piece out of it, but no, true. I think financing your company differently means making an optimal financing balance between paid-in money by customers, maybe some equity, why not? It strengthens your balance, it makes you a respectable company, and then complement it with grants that should not be reimbursed, that don't lead to dilution. That's a much smarter way. And in fact, you're much closer to your best customers. You're learning a lot. If you play the game rightly, you'll have a product which is much closer to their requirements. Just learning about their requirements, and yeah, so interesting.
Great insights, Maarten. Thank you very much. I think that was a hell of a show. And I learned personally a lot, and I also checked some of my internal checkboxes of what to do and what not to do. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk with such an experienced startupper as yourself, and with a company that broke even the dream of many startups. So congrats on that, and maybe a couple of things that we leave our listeners with. Where can people reach you? Where can they go to reach you, to talk to you?
The easiest is probably www.limecraft.com. There is the contact pages, but apart from that, the more lean back way is to follow us on Twitter or on LinkedIn. We will not spamming.
I can attest to that. I can attest to that, and very, very interesting posts. I always follow and really like you guys. And if someone on the IBC in Amsterdam, then probably they're gonna meet you there as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hall 10, booth F40, and you're welcome.
Yeah, perfect. We're gonna put it in the show notes. Maarten, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you, and yeah, let's see you sometime soon. Bye bye.